Welcome, ACPS families and students. Thank you for joining us. In order to ensure that all are able to access this presentation in their preferred language, we are providing simultaneous interpretation in Spanish, Amharic, and Arabic today. After the interpreters have provided their instructions, please press the globe icon that will appear at the bottom of your computer screen and select your preferred language. If you are watching on a phone, press the three dots at the bottom right of your screen and then select your preferred language. Thank you. Now, I'd like our interpreters to give instructions, starting with Spanish, then Amharic, then Arabic.
Bienvenidos a las familias y estudiantes del distrito ACPS. Para que todas las personas tengan acceso al lenguaje apropiado, vamos a proveer servicios de interpretación simultánea. Oprima el símbolo del globo abajo en pantalla o los tres puntitos en su celular y luego escoja español. Gracias.
የኤሲፒኤስ ቤተሰቦችና ተማሪዎች እንኳን ደህና መጣችሁ። እዚህ ስለተገኛችሁ እናመሰግናለን። ሁሉም ሰው በራሱ ቋንቋ የትርጉም አገልግሎት መጠቀም እንዲችል በስፓኒሽኛ፣ በአማርኛና በአረብኛ የትርጉም አገልግሎት እየሰጠን ነው። የዓለም ቅርጽ ያለበትን በመጫን አምሃሪክ የሚለውን በመምረጥ የአማርኛ ቋንቋን ትርጉም አገልግሎት ማግኘት ትችላላችሁ። በስልክ የምትጠቀሙ ደግሞ 3 ነጥቦች አሉ። እሱን በመጫን ቋንቋውን በመምረጥ መገልገል ይችላሉ። ታንክ ዩ።
Arabic instructions, please.
Sorry, I was on mute. مساء الخير أهالي مدينة ألكسندريا، نشكركم على حضوركم معنا اليوم، وبنحاول نشرح لكم بأنه هذه الجلسة مزودة ب3 لغات لغاية أنه الجميع يستطيعون المناقشة بهذه المجلسة. 3 لغات: العربية والأمهرية والإسبانيولية. إذا أنتم كنتم عم تحضرون من خلال الكمبيوتر، رجاء الضغط على الشاشة على الكرة الأرضية، رمز الكرة الأرضية الموجود على أسفل الشاشة لاختيار اللغة العربية لسماع باللغة العربية. وإذا كنتم عم تحضرون من تليفون، اختاروا من ضمن النقاط ال3 على أسفل الشاشة برضو لتختاروا اللغة العربية. شكرا مرة ثانية لحضوركم، وهلأ رح تبدأ الجلسة.
Now let's welcome School Board Member Margaret Lorber, who will introduce our panelists.
Good evening, everyone. It's so nice to be here. My name is Margaret Lorber. I am a member of the Alexandria City School Board and the proud parent of 2 Titans, class of 2001 and 2005. This is the 3rd community conversation as part of what we're calling the Identity Project. The Identity Project was created as a result of the requests to change the name of 2 of our schools, petitions from our community. And it was decided that in order for people to really understand the namesake of T.C. Williams and Matthew Morey, we should have a community education program, which is the Identity Project. And there have been a number of sessions which you can see if you've missed them. There are 3 community sessions and a variety of other panels, all tremendously interesting, focused on both the history of Alexandria and the values of our community and where we want to go in the future. I think this evening's conversation is going to be very interesting. We have outstanding panelists, so I'm delighted to introduce. First off, Cindy Benavides. She is the CEO of the League of United Latin American Citizens, which I've always called LULAC, and she is also a TC Titan. Our second panelist, Chris Harris, is another TC Titan and currently president of the Alexandria NAACP. And finally, last but not least, a current Titan, a TC senior, Ashley Sanchez Villafara. And Ashley is actually also a liaison, a student member of our school board. So we've been working with Ashley throughout the year. I would also like to introduce or mention that our superintendent, Greg Hutchings, Dr. Greg Hutchings, is on the Zoom, and he will be providing comments at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, let me turn this over to to our moderator, actually our two moderators, John Porter and Tanika Tukan. I'm sorry.
That was perfect. Thank you, Margaret. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the final community conversation for this portion of the Identity Project. My name is Tanika Taylor Tukan, and I am the School Engagement and Community Outreach Manager for Alexandria City Public Schools, and I'm co-moderating this evening with Mr. John Porter.
Good evening, everyone. I'm a former TC principal and a retiree of ACPS. I'm back to assist with this effort on the renaming of TC and Matthew Maury.
So over the past few weeks, we have welcomed and engaged with a variety of community members, both as panelists and as audience participants in what I think has been a really thoughtful reflection process and eye-opening history lesson about Alexandria's and ACPS's evolving relationship with race, equity, and education. Tonight, I'm especially interested to see and hear how the arc of the conversation progresses because we have a panel of certified Titans who will be driving the conversation. We've spoken with lifelong Alexandrians over the past couple of weeks, Gwen Day Fuller and Erica Miller, about growing up here in Alexandria as the children of community activists and civil rights icons. We also had the pleasure of speaking with Earl Cook, who was a member of the 1971 Championship Titans team, and Audrey Davis, who is the director of the Alexandria Black History Museum. So I think it's really fitting that we're concluding this stage of the process of the Identity Project with Cindy Benavides, Chris Harris, and Ashley Sanchez Villafara, who are all TC Titans. So I'm looking forward to hearing and being challenged by your experiences and perspectives this evening. And before I ask each of you to introduce yourselves, I do want to give another warm welcome to all of the community members who have joined us here on Zoom and on Facebook, and really, I think, call out and highlight that our goal for tonight, as it has been with each conversation, is to acknowledge Alexandria's history while discussing who we are currently as a school division. We really encourage you to not just listen to the panelists' responses to the questions, but to consider them for yourselves and post your comments and your questions on Zoom using the Q&A feature. If you're tuning in on Facebook, we encourage you to post your comments there. We'll be monitoring that platform as well. So now, with all of that said, I do want to turn it over to our esteemed panelists. It's been mentioned several times already that you all graduated from TC or that you will soon, but if you could start us off and provide an introduction for yourselves to the community, just by sharing a little bit more about your connection to ACPS and to Alexandria, that would be great. And I'd like to start with Cindy. We're just going to go in alphabetical order by last name.
Thank you so much, Tanika, and always a pleasure to see Mr. Porter. I still cannot call him John. He was my principal when I was at TC Williams High School, and again, I graduated in the year 2000. And just a shout out to the superintendent as well. We've had several conversations, and I'm just happy to be able to give back to the community that saw me grow up and is a part of my journey of who I am today. Again, Cindy Benavides, and I serve as the National CEO of the League of United Latin American Citizens. LULAC is the oldest and largest national Latino civil rights organization in the country. And I stepped into this position about 2 years ago, making me the first Latina to lead this national organization in 90 years. And I would say, Tanika, to the question of personal beliefs, as I think of the name change of TC Williams, I think one of them is really the idea of inclusivity and understanding our own history. And as I looked at the makeup of TC Williams, it was diverse when I was there over 20 years ago, and it's even more diverse today. The fact is that in 2020, over 42% of the student body is Latino. and that we're going to continue to grow. You know, for folks that don't know the national numbers, Latinos currently make up 60 million of the total population. And in just 30 years, we're going to be 130 million strong, which means that 1 in 3 Americans will have Latino ancestry. And so as I think of, you know, what's really weighing heavily in my mind, I'm thinking of all the different intersections in which we live. I'm thinking of George Floyd and the fact that we're in the middle of a Black Lives Matter movement. I'm thinking of, one, how diverse my own hometown of the city of Alexandria is. And also the fact that we want to make sure that as we think of inclusivity and as we think through a lens of diversity, that we acknowledge our past, but we also make sure that we take steps to acknowledge the present and also the future that's coming to the city.
Welcome, Cindy. Thank you. And welcome, Chris.
Thank you. I definitely appreciate the opportunity to be here. This has been a conversation that's been ongoing for some time, and I'm definitely happy to be a part of it. My name is Chris Harris. I'm a 1992 graduate of TC Williams. I'm currently the president of the Alexandria NAACP, as well as a member of the Alexandria Human Rights Commission. I've been a lifelong Alexandrian, and my heart has definitely been here the entire time. You know, it's warms my heart to be a part of this conversation and have some kind of impact in the change of addressing this issue right here and moving forward on it. In regard to my personal beliefs, I've gotten a lot of flack over the last few months in being in support of the name change. Because being a Titan, of course, we want to maintain our history. And I've had classmates call me and question, why am I supporting the name? Why can't we, maintain the history of it and leave it as is? And my question to that is, over the last few months, well, over the last year or so, we've had conversations about statues in the city and around the country. And I'm a big proponent to remove those statues in the city because of the negative history and connotations. And the same connotation and history is attached to the name. And it would be hypocritical to say that I support leaving the name as is, while also supporting removing the other statues and the other names around the city. And that's been my biggest challenge because, of course, I am a Titan. And regardless of whether you remove the name, it does not remove the history behind the name. And I think we have enough educated people in the city to find a way to maintain the great history of the school, even as we transition to possibly a different name. I think that it will be a challenge. I do respect the process, and I look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, and welcome, Ashley.
Okay, thank you everyone for having me here for the third time. My name is Ashley Sanchez Viafra. I'm a senior at TC Williams currently, and I think I'm a lifelong Alexandrian. I've lived here my entire life. And even though my family has not lived here and they're originally from Columbia, I've kind of created, I've grown really attached to the city and really attached to ACPS because I feel like that's been able to facilitate me the opportunities to really expand on my knowledge about, social justice issues and just expand my knowledge overall about the things that I'm most passionate about, which is, ensuring equity and is at the center of everything and that all students are heard. And so I think one of my personal beliefs that's really weighing heavily on this name change is just the whole idea of intersectionality. I feel like intersectionality is just so important and critical when you're having these conversations because we all come from multifaceted identities and TC heavily represents this. And currently with the history that we have, that's not accurately represented. Like I've said before, we go to a school with someone that didn't want us there, that didn't want students to be integrated, to be in the same spaces, to be able to, share experiences and share stories with each other. So with me, just the whole idea of intersectionality is really weighing on this name change, because it ensures our ability to, understand each other and be truly unified in a collective sense.
Thank you for sharing that, Ashley. It actually looks like one of our community members posted something in the Q&A that really sort of reaffirms what you were saying. And I'm going to read this verbatim from Zion B. She wrote that T.C. Williams was outspoken about his dislike for desegregation and even went as far as to fight it for several years. The school has come a long way since the former racist superintendent, and now can proudly declare that the school has a vibrant and diverse community within its walls. Having talks about our students' identities is very important. I understand that this has been going on for select students, and I strongly feel that this should be the case for all students, including the Ethiopian community. So I want to thank Zion for submitting that comment, and I thought that it really reaffirmed some of the things that we heard from each of you when talking about what personal beliefs you were weighing heavily as you considered your position on this issue. Just as a little follow-up question, especially for Chris and Cindy, since you are a little further removed from TC, how did you feel when you learned that ACPS was formally considering changing the name of the school when you first heard?
I can jump in here, Tanika, and first have to echo what Ashley has said in terms of the intersectionality that so many of us live in, and also uplift the fact that Alexandria, what makes Alexandria, the city of Alexandria, so wonderful and so beautiful, it's its diversity, and it's diversity also among our growing new majority community, which includes our Ethiopian community, includes our Arabic speaking community. And I think that's something that we have to uplift and acknowledge. I would say that, like when I started hearing of the name change, Tanika, it completely aligned with the work that I'm doing. My job every day is to wake up and protect and defend the Latino community across the 50 states, and that also includes Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. But beyond that, this discussion around representation and also acknowledging our past is very important. And I say that because in the national context, LULAC right now is fighting to make sure that some of our military army bases change their names to reflect the diversity of our military. And one of those is Fort Hood out in Texas, which is named after a Confederate General, John Bell Hood. And we actually want that specific army base to be changed to Roy Benavides, because he was someone that has fought for our country, someone that represents the growing Latino community within the army. And a lot of individuals don't know that a lot of our military bases are named after Confederate generals who by all means would be considered traitors today. And so I think as we think of the local context and we think about why it's so meaningful to have this discussion, and that our own school board is taking up this decision, which was started by the community, I think it reflects the fact that the city of Alexandria has come a long way. And I say that because if you read and have studied the history of T.C. Williams and the former superintendent and his remarks and what was said in terms of even school integration, I would say that probably at this point, Thomas Chambliss would probably be rolling in his grave to see the diversity that T.C. Williams has today, and the fact that it's really majority minority. Tanika, I would say I think it's wonderful to see that this dialogue is occurring. And I also want to applaud our student body and the community for understanding the moment that we're living in and making sure that we take action at the local level, that we take action in our own backyard to create these changes for our underrepresented community.
Well, for me, I'm ashamed to say that the entire time that I attended TC, I never knew the person that the school was named after. Even as my 3 children matriculated through T.C. Williams, I did not know. And when the topic came up of changing the name, I decided to do my homework and find out a little bit more about this man. And I was disgusted. I was disgusted to know that for 4 years, and years as my kids went through it, they walked through a door under a man's name, to Ashley's point, that did not want them there. And it disheartened me. But also encouraged me because it gave us the opportunity to start the conversation. This allows us to start calling systemic racism and discrimination and the denial of opportunities against people of color and other races what it is, racism. And we can't be afraid to say that word. We have to be in a position where we are comfortable with being uncomfortable. And in order to do that, we have to have the conversation. We have a tendency to name and frame racism with coded language to soften what it really is. And I understand that this is just one step. It's just a name. But we also understand that we can't stop here because we know that there are also policies that are still in place and practices that are still in place that are just as racist as the name. And it allows us to continue the conversation and move forward. But again, this is more so symbolic, but we also need to continue to build actionable policies that we can build off just changing the name.
Thank you. So it sounds like from both of your, for each of your responses that you're already starting to point to things that we can do on a community level or an even larger level. So I'd like to shift to start talking a little bit more about community values and what you believe the most important community value is that should be sort of lifted up during this process as we're deciding whether or not to change the name of T.C. Williams and Matthew Morey Elementary Schools.
Well, I can jump in. For one, we need to, I believe that whatever name we decide, it needs to be reflective of someone that has made a significant contribution to the community. And it also has to be reflective of the cultures of the students that it serves. It's not so often, we don't change a name every year. We don't change it every 10 years. This name is gonna stand for some time, for years on end after we're gone. And we need to look at that and take that serious and realize that, a name can be, inspirational and impactful for all students. And anytime we can educate the students and against role models that look like them and act like them and are reflective of them, it goes a long way to inspire them that they can move forward and achieve. So it's more than just a name because there was thought put into the name it is now. Someone thought it was a good idea to name our school after a admitted racist, after someone that was historically a bigot. And that's a concern in itself in the time where racism and bigotry was at its height. Someone thought it was a good idea. So having this conversation now, I think that we should not rush the process. I don't think that we should take the naming lightly, but we also should take in consideration not only where we are, but also where we're going when we decide the name of our school. Because at the end, I believe that we will always be Titans, but just the name in front of it will be a little different.
And I'll jump in here, and I definitely want to hear from Ashley as well. And I would say that what I'm keeping in mind, Tanika, is the basic value of respect. and respecting our community's identity, respecting our community's ancestry, respecting our community's history, and making sure that as a name is selected and that name, hopefully there will be many recommendations that are made from the community as well as from the student body, that we understand that the America that we're living in today in 2020 and the America that we wish to see and create has to respect the makeup of the city of Alexandria. And that includes a diversity that I think is way ahead of its time. And, when I think of the 42%, that's where America will be close to that in terms of Latino community in more than 30 years from now. When I think of respect, I also think of that intersection where we have to also acknowledge our own privilege. And I say that being someone who is Latina, someone who is a light-skinned Latina, someone who is able to work remotely from home, even when I know the majority of my community, and amidst this global pandemic, has to leave their house to work and get paid every single day. And understanding the importance of diversity and inclusion. And, a lot of individuals wonder or ask, why is that important? And I think if you're asking the why that is important, then we have some work to do introspectively in terms of understanding our own privilege. I would, completely say that for me, that is top of mind. And also as an immigrant, the fact is that the city of Alexandria has so many new Americans and has citizens from across the globe. And in the context that we're living today, where immigrants are being persecuted, where immigrants are fearful of established government systems, we have to make sure that our community in the city of Alexandria feels protected and feels like they are part of a comunidad, of our community there.
Just touching base on what Mr. Harris said, kind of relates to much of what my community value is, which is just the whole idea of communication. I feel like communication, just that itself, can go such a long way. Like the power of dialogue, like us having those intentional, meaningful conversations about these systems and just being able to understand each other's experiences can go such a long way. I feel like something that we lack, especially just focusing on TC, just the observations that I've made throughout the years, I feel like something that we truly lack is being able to sit down with each other, educators and students, and having student to student conversations where we just sit down and hear each other out and really take the opportunity to understand each other's differences and understand our experiences and our circumstances and our backgrounds. Because I feel like something that we really do, especially in more rigorous courses, we don't have those conversations. We don't say how it is. We start putting other names for which should really truly be addressed, such as racism, the bias, the discrimination. And I just feel like communication can just go such a long way if we just take the time to understand the language of what we're talking about, the inequality, the inequity, the oppression. We can truly make a change and educate people, because education has the power to dismantle these systems. If we are culturally aware, if we are responsive, we can really make the changes that are necessary and really be the school division that we want to be and that we've set ourselves to. And we've set ourselves to that standard of equity. And I feel like just having those conversations and utilizing the power of dialogue to do so can really allow us to bring that.
Thank you so much, Ashley. We're going to move to the next slide. Thank you, Helen. And just to pick up on what you were saying about dialogue, Ashley, and just the need to have these like well thought out conversations with people with varying views on various topics, I'd like to turn specifically to the issue of the name, because names carry power and can be significant. So I wonder if each of you could weigh in on what you believe the significance of names are and what power they have either to promote pride or invoke harmful memories amongst a community. And before any of you jump in, I do also want to share a Facebook comment that we saw come in, which has to do with the names. And this Facebook user posted, changing the names of schools is to change the meaning of the whole history from our memories. No changes at all, please.
I'll jump in. Everyone wants to leave me hanging. I'll jump in. As I was saying before, I mean, a name is significant, and I have to disagree with the comment that changing the name changes the history, because it doesn't. The history will always be the history. We look at slavery, by calling it what it is doesn't downplay what it really is, what it was. You can name it what it is. Racism, I mean, calling it systemic injustice or discrimination or denial of opportunities, it's still racism, and the policies still exist even with the name change. Again, I just believe that we should have some deep thought in what it should be. If you are walking to a school every day and you know that someone believed that it was a good idea to name it after an individual that did not want a certain race of people in his school, that's a problem. Because when you look at that, it looks like it's acceptable. Children look like it's okay to champion someone that hated them. And even as a graduate and as an alumni of TC, there were my conflicts of should we or should we not. But once you look at the history of the man, look at who the man was, there was no question. History can be preserved, as I said. I mean, the history will always be the history. We refer ourselves as Titans, and we will always be Titans, even if the reference name changes. And I just think that we should be a little more understanding and empathetic to those who are affected by that, because everyone's not affected by the name change. Everyone doesn't think that there's something wrong with it. And unfortunately, we live in a world where our opinions should be valued and respected, but not at the detriment of those that have endured this type of treatment for years on end.
I would say, Tanika, as I think of what's in a name, or I think of, heritage, I think of values. And, just to give you a sense, my full name is Cindy Marisol Maria Magdalena Benavides Villeda, right? But unfortunately, on my social security card, only Cindy Marisol Benavides fit. And why I bring that up is because all of those names are part of my heritage, of my grandparents and my great-grandparents, and who my parents are and who I am today. And I think it's so important that we are able to acknowledge that a name can be so meaningful. And the fact is that as we think of the future of TC Williams, especially thinking of the representative student body, the truth is that today, so many of us are still so underrepresented, not only in positions, but also in names. And names can be a point of pride. And I just want you to think of, the buildings that are named, the statues that exist, and how many of those are named after the people of color who built the city of Alexandria, people of color who have been a part of the history of the city of Alexandria. And I say that also in the context that we live in an America where our own school system was not made for Latinos and African Americans. We actually had to fight our way to integrate schools. And I'm so happy to say that LULAC was a part of that challenge. We were involved in Mendez versus Westminster, which was the precedent that was used in Brown versus Board to educate all schools. And so when we look at the context of our institutional systems that are in place, we have to understand that history that has omitted our narratives, has omitted our contributions. And the truth is that we can't be what we can't see. And I say that not only in the names that we see in the buildings, in the statutes that we see in the buildings, but also how Latinos and other communities of color are represented within the city of Alexandria, whether it's counselors, teachers, or administrative levels. And I would just, say that, a name can invoke different things, right? It can invoke that long history that America has had of racism and segregation and discrimination. And changing a name doesn't mean that we change our history, right? History is what has occurred. I also want us to be mindful that oftentimes history was not written by Latinos. History was not written by African Americans, and that history oftentimes omitted our own narratives. And so I think we are at that intersection in America, and especially in the city of Alexandria, which prides itself of its diversity, of looking towards the future. And again, we are acknowledging our past, we are acknowledging our history. I think we will always be Titans, no matter what name is put forward. And before I close out, I just want to give a shout out to Ms. Guadalupe Silva Kraus, because she was there when I was at TC Williams. She was a parent liaison. And Ms. Lupe is someone that I love and admire. And she was the person at TC Williams who told me that I should go to college, even when other people told me I shouldn't. And it's because of her, in a way, that I am where I am. So I just wanted to give that shout out to her.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ashley.
Thank you. So I respectfully disagree with the comment. I think just we've created a school identity of a very diversified, multifaceted, school community identity under a name that rejected the idea of this identity. And I feel like changing the name is not going to erase the history. The history will continue to be there with us. And instead of thinking of it as, us changing the name is erasing the history, no, it's more so as looking at it from a different perspective and taking that first step forward to really, dismantle those systems and really to address the things that continue to perpetuate in our society. And I just feel that, even though we change the name, those systems are still going to be in place, just like Mr. Harris said. That's still going to be there, and we have still things to address: the systemic racism, the bias, the microaggressions. And changing the name is just the first step of addressing that, and to really, proving and showing that we are making the necessary, taking the necessary initiatives to bring that change. So I feel that changing the name won't erase the history, but more so just shed a new light on what we are trying to be and what we can be as a school community and as a school division.
Thank you, Ashley. I'm actually going to stick with you as we move to the next question, because I think it's a natural sort of segue that in terms of what you were just speaking about. We know that renaming schools is just one way of reckoning with Alexandria's history. Dr. Hutchings has spoken frequently and strongly about the need to ensure an anti-racist culture here within ACPS. Can you talk to us about some additional actions or alternative ways that ACPS can consider mitigating really the persistent effects of historical racism in our school system?
Yeah, I think one of the really big things, I think that can really, show us as being an anti-racist school district and really equity focused. I think it's just looking at the curriculum, especially the curriculum that we're taught, and just the biases that are in the curriculum, because it's very whitewashed, if I'm being quite frank. It's very whitewashed curriculum. It doesn't show the other perspectives of the story. It doesn't show the history of communities of color. It doesn't show the history of underrepresented groups. It doesn't show all those different identities and perspectives. So I feel like the first step that we can take is really looking into the curriculum and making it more inclusive of the identities present within academic spaces. And I think another thing that could really, achieve this idea of being equity focused and anti-racist is just creating those spaces for students of color so that they can really speak about their experiences. I can say that there are so many unheard experiences within ACPS, and there have been many students of color that are afraid to even, talk about these experiences because of the things that they have encountered in these classrooms, the bias, the microaggressions, the being rejected by teachers. So it's just being able to create those safe, inclusive spaces for them where they can, truly talk about what's going on, because experiences are so powerful, and it's truly meaningful. And I can say that, organizing the student conversations, just hearing what a lot of students from the secondary level had to say about, being students in ACPS truly, opened my eyes and just made the whole conversation even more intentional and meaningful. And also, I'd just say, creating a new narrative and, not looking at fitting things into existing systems, but creating new systems and making the necessary changes so we can all be, critically conscious and just responsive and just, overall like empathetic of, student circumstances, and ensuring that, they're respected and they feel supported and they feel included. Because I think that's just really what school is about, and what educators are really focused on is just being there for their students.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Cindy or Chris, did you want to chime in?
I'm happy to chime in, Tanika, and I was just messaging Ashley. I'm hoping that she will run for office soon after she graduates from college. I'm going to ask you like 6 times, Ashley, run for office. I would love to see you representing us in that position. I would say, I absolutely agree with what Ashley has said in terms of looking at the curriculum and looking also at the books that we put in front of our students and making sure that we have authors that represent our community and that's inclusive of our contributions. I absolutely agree with that. And then I would say, and this is a big one for me as a Latina, understanding that when we look at the pay equity of Latinas in general, we get paid 53 cents to what our Caucasian counterparts get paid doing the same exact job. And so even looking at a very citywide level pay equity, understanding that there's not only sexism occurs and racism, but that we still have long ways to make sure that women are represented and that we also have pay equity at all levels of the school system. And then I would also, and I will preface it by saying that, when I was at TC Williams, and that was over 20 years ago, I remember being one of the few Latinas in AP classes or honor classes, and making sure that we examine and look at the model internally within the school system to make sure that we have that wide pipeline of communities of color accessing honor classes and AP classes. And I think, I say it, not looking at recent numbers or looking at recent studies, but based on my own experience as a Titan when I was there over 20 years ago. And lastly, I would say the issue of representation. And, there's this saying in the civil rights community, nothing about us without us, and making sure that our community's perspectives, whether they're Latino or they're from Ethiopia or they're Arabic or they are from another part of the world are included. I will tell you that oftentimes what I see with governments is that we're so used to working within specific frames in specific boxes. And so even, for example, in future polling that is done, maybe sending it out via text message, understanding that so many in the Latino community don't have access to technology and broadband. And I'm only thinking of the parents maybe that had to work or students who are struggling to have Wi-Fi in their houses who aren't able to participate because they fall under that 1 and 3. And I know that this is not only in the Latino community, but it's really across the board in communities of color.
Thank you, Cindy. It was actually kind of chilling to hear you talk about your experience as being one of few Latina students in your AP classes, because that's something that I've heard Ashley speak about at several of these community conversations and student forums about the disparity in terms of representation in those programs and courses. So to have two people here on the same panel who are 20 years apart in terms of their connection at TC who can speak to the same issue was telling. Chris, you unmuted your mic, so I'll let you hop in.
Thank you. I mean, a lot of good points were touched on, and I can kind of piggyback on a few, especially the AP classes. When I was in TC, I was in AP classes, and I was one of the few persons of color in those classes. And I only was allowed to be in those classes because my parents were educated enough to ask the right questions and to talk to those and make sure that I had a fair opportunity to be in those classes. And I know that a lot of people of color do not have those opportunities. They don't know what the gateways are to even get through those doors. In addition to that, the discipline. We have to look at, the disparity of persons of color and their discipline in school, the suspension rates, the use of the SROs. And I'm not going to demean the police on any level, but we can't ignore the statistics of the African-American students, for one, being one of the lowest percentages of students in the schools, but they're the highest percentages of students being disciplined and suspended. And lastly, students want to be involved with the kind of conversation, and we have to make school receptive to those conversations. We can't make our students feel like they should be embarrassed or there's going to be any kind of repercussions by having these tough discussions about racism. And in order to do that, we have to ensure that teachers are equipped to even have the conversations. There has to be outlets that are provided for those that are affected to feel comfortable enough to have those tough conversations and feel like that they are in a space that can be trusted, where it can be receptive, and that action will be taken if things are in a place where they're uncomfortable.
Thank you, Chris. I know we've received some comments in the Q&A on Facebook that really touched on and supported some of the things that you all shared and that challenged some of the things that you shared. So I'm going to ask John if he can help us navigate through some of those in the time that we have left.
Thank you, Tanika. Happy to do so. We do have a few minutes left, and I would invite anyone out there with questions to please pose those questions. We'd love to see them and respond to them if at all possible. One person writes, names of buildings, any buildings or symbols, they are representations of our values. Alexandria has only one high school. How can we allow the name of a racist person to represent our city's best and brightest, our city's future? Changing the name is how we begin to break down the barriers that still exist for so many of our students. As a community, we must do better for all of our children. This person would just like to thank the presenters tonight, as Lupe Silva did a few minutes ago, feeling that what you have had to say in this vein for this part of the conversation has been very, very enlightening. One person writes, a 91 graduate writes that, they are an alumni of 1991, parent, community member, and partner. The idea that once you know better, you do better needs to be kept in mind. When T.C. Williams was chosen as a name, even though Brown versus Board of Education had been decided, desegregation had not happened. So it was pre-desegregation, pre-special ed inclusion. Superintendent Williams stood against all of these. These same concepts are now cornerstones of our education system, implying that things do change. This person then offers a number of different opportunities, feeling that the name should be changed in a number of different directions in which this could be done. Some suggestions, and I'm going to save those suggestions for the next round. If the decision is made by the board to change, the next round will be to look at what named opportunities might be provided. One person writes on Facebook that, I've got to scroll up, excuse me. We have not until today thought about changing the name. A name will not necessarily change things for students. This person's talking about, in some ways, how students maybe have not had opportunities and therefore are not reflecting what we would want them to be or be able to have and do. And therefore, this person's suggesting that we need to look at, as we have talked about, I believe, some of the broader opportunities of expanding and changing some other things that provide students with better opportunities to perform better in various facets, from student discipline to academic success. Let's see. We have a number of people thanking the panelists for their comments this evening. I would like to ask one question myself, and that is, I know Chris alluded to this a little bit a few minutes ago, that he had talked to people in the community, some of whom were not, some of his classmates or those who went to TC who were not supportive of a name change. Have any of you had conversations? Ashley, I know you have, and we'll want to hear what the students feel too. But Cindy and Chris, in a broader sense, what are you hearing, and where's the majority seem to be going relative to name change for TC Williams and or Maury?
I can chime in. Everyone is pretty much real receptive of the name change, but there are communities that believe that it's just symbolic. They know that it's just a first step of a bigger systemic issue that we have to deal with in the city, and they don't want to claim a victory by just getting a name change and then forget about the bigger picture, and then the ball gets dropped, and then we have a name change with a new name, but the same racist system still in place. I think that, well, they believe, as well as myself, that once we get over the name change, that's a pregame. That's what that would be a scrimmage. Then the real ball game starts. When you start to change policy and enact things that are affecting our kids daily. And I don't believe that there should be any delay with that, because every delay that we have in changing policy, more students are coming through the system that are not being properly served. So there should be a sense of urgency, but also a sense of responsibility and good judgment in doing so.
And I would completely agree with that, Mr. Porter. And what I would say is, daily I am, working on all fronts, whether it's government or it's corporate America or even in the nonprofit world. And, in the middle of Black Lives Matter, how many of us saw statements from major corporations issued on Black Lives Matter? But when you started digging in, we understood that that was perhaps a first step and that more needed to be done. And I think in that sense, Christopher is completely right that, this is a first step for our own city to reckon with its own past and start thinking of what lies ahead, and that future is very bright. I would also say that as we think of the city of Alexandria and understanding its community, the truth is, Mr. Porter, that we're living amidst a global pandemic, COVID-19, that's impacting so many communities of color. And I say that as a nonprofit organization that has worked here in my own backyard and nationally, including Puerto Rico, and doing food insecurity services and financial services and even technology services, understanding that some in our community right now are not even thinking of the name change because they're just struggling to put food on the table for their children or stay in their own homes because, you know, the moratoriums on rent is going to be are already expiring. And so I would say there's also still much awareness and education that needs to happen. But I will also say that what gives me so much hope is that our students, and I completely agree with Chris, when I was going to TC Williams, I did not research the name. So Ashley, you're way ahead of us, and our Mighty Titans are way ahead of where Chris and I were back in 91 and 2000. And I would say that our student body, thankfully, they are awake. And the truth is that our millennials, Gen Zers, and beyond are coming into an America where they understand their voice, where they understand that they want to be represented, where they understand that our history and names do matter. And as we look towards the future, we absolutely have to keep those point of references in mind. And again, you know, the hashtags that I use is that we can't be what we can't see and nothing about us without us. And I just want to highlight the point that Christopher made in terms of the criminal justice system. And the truth is that oftentimes what we see is a pipeline, a prison to pipeline, and not a pipeline to opportunity for our kids. And I think that's where we have to reframe the narrative and make sure that we're thinking really holistically about the solutions ahead.
Thank you. And so I appreciate the time and everyone else's time who has joined us tonight. And we are nearing the end of our allotted time for this evening's discussion. But I do just want to close by sharing a final comment by one of the parents who has joined us, who really reaffirmed again some of the things that you all just said, that changing the name of the schools is only a part of the actions that need to take place to make all students feel welcomed. What's the point of changing the names if we're not taking part in actions that will truly support a vibrant community? It won't be easy, but it's necessary. So to that end, we do want to thank everyone who has participated in the Identity Project and the series of community read-ins and community conversations to this point, and remind you that we have a survey that is open where you can, it'll be open until midnight, and we really encourage you to complete it and let us know how you fall, which side of the issue that you fall on, and how much you've learned, if you've learned anything about the history of the names of the TC Williams High School and Matthew Morey Elementary School. With that, I do want to turn it over to Ms. Lorber to help us close out.
Thank you so much, Tanika. I just have to say, I want to thank our panelists. This was really an impressive conversation this evening. I wish the whole community could have been listening. I learned a lot, but I was just impressed and absolutely agree with the statement that changing a name is the first step. We're headed in the right direction. And in fact, I want to turn it over to Dr. Greg Hutchings, our superintendent, so that he can say a few words about the direction we are heading, because I'm very excited to be part of a school system that is going to be working full force on becoming more equitable and reckoning with our past. So without further ado, let me pass the torch on to Dr. Hutchings.
Thank you, Ms. Lorber. One, I just want to thank you. I appreciate the fact that we are able to have this discussion. One, it's so great to see Cindy on here, my fellow Titan, Chris, my fellow Titan, Ashley, a current Titan who will be graduating this year, who I know, let's forget running for office. Let her just be the president of the United States of America. I know you got to grow, get a little older to be able to be eligible, but Ashley, you are such a remarkable young lady who just has such a bright future. I am so proud to have you on our board. and all that you're doing with this work. You know, the first thing that I said when we were taking this journey for the Identity Project was that we needed to hear the voices of our young people. And this is why it's so important. History is lost when our young people are not informed about it. You know, it's unfortunate that Chris had to go through his high school experience and his adult experience, not even knowing who Thomas Chambliss Williams was, because there would have been a different impression that he would have had about the school, I'm sure, if he had known at that time. So history is power, and it will allow us to not repeat it. And I just have to say, one, I am proud to be a Titan, especially to have Mr. Porter on here as my former principal. He is like the principal of principals, the king of principals, I can tell you that. And I'm just fortunate, one, to be able to still be back in my hometown, as Cindy mentioned. This city has done so much for the Titans who are on here. You know, for us to be able to come back and open doors for the next generation, it is priceless. And people don't understand that unless you are a Titan and unless you have come back home to your hometown that made you who you were or who you are. And I just want to say, I just echo what you have said, Cindy, about that. I look forward to everybody completing these surveys because, hey, I can't wait till next month. I get to make a recommendation to the school board on what we're going to do next. And I just have to tell you, like, from these past sessions that we've had and all the information, because I've even learned some new things as well. And I've been doing a lot of reading over the past year about this. I'm looking forward for us changing this name. Like, I feel like I don't know how we could not, with the core values that we have as a school division, you know, with the fact that racial equity is the heart of everything that we do, and us being such a diverse institution, we would not be living up to who we are as a school division, as a community, as a city, if we were not going to change this name. So I can't wait until November 16th to give my recommendation to the board. And I just appreciate having the board that we have right now, who unanimously said, we want to make sure that we are educating our community so that we can make this decision in regards to the name change because of the history and of who this person was, not because we're trying to follow along what other people in communities are doing. But we wanted to educate people before we made that decision. So I'm looking forward to all this concluding, and thank you for the evening and enjoy the rest of your night.